Phase 1. The Illusion of Solvency. It's 9 p.m. on a Saturday night. Stand outside any aggressively pretentious restaurant in the upscale district of your city and watch the orchestrated ballet of the valet stand. You will see an endless parade of depreciating European metal, leased BMWs and entry-level Audis, being handed over by men wearing designer watches that cost more than their rent. They step onto the pavement with an air of absolute superiority. But if you possessed the ability to look right through the tailored fabric of those suits, you wouldn't see actual wealth. You would see a stack of heavily leveraged plastic. You would see credit cards pushed to their absolute limits, silently sweating under the crushing mathematical pressure of 25% annual percentage rates, just praying the terminal approves the $350 dinner transaction without declining. This is the biological makeup of the premium broke. We currently exist in a deeply flawed era where the visible markers of wealth have been intentionally decoupled from actual financial solvency. The modern economic machine has successfully brainwashed the working class into believing that success is no longer measured by the silent, private accumulation of net worth. Instead, they have been force-fed the delusion that success is simply the ability to access immediate, high-interest consumer credit to simulate a millionaire's lifestyle. It is the desperate documentation of debt-funded vacations, lease-financed vehicles, and heavily branded clothing, meticulously curated for an audience of digital strangers. But here is the brutal reality. Wearing the expensive uniform of the rich does not grant you entry into their socio-economic class. It mathematically guarantees your exclusion. The premium broke individual typically possesses a decent, above-average income, yet they live their entire lives in a perpetual state of silent, agonizing panic. They are exactly one unexpected medical emergency or missed paycheck away from total bankruptcy. They bleed precious capital every single month just to maintain a fragile facade of prosperity. Their entire identity is built on financial quicksand. They do it because the thought of looking poor is infinitely more horrifying to them than the mathematical reality of actually being poor. Which brings us to the ultimate question. What is the invisible gear that secretly profits every time you swipe the plastic to impress people who, deep down, actually want to see you fail? It isn't just human vanity. Vanity is merely the raw material. The invisible gear is the global financial architecture, Wall Street, banking conglomerates, and the hyper-optimized algorithmic credit industry. They have brilliantly commodified human insecurity. Every time you finance a lifestyle you cannot afford, you voluntarily sign a modern contract of indentured servitude. You are literally paying a massive premium via compounding interest and accelerated depreciation for the fleeting privilege of looking rich today, while guaranteeing you remain poor forever. The system does not want you to build real wealth. They want you just solvent enough to make the minimum monthly payments, but broke enough to never escape the cycle. The premium broke are not players in the game of wealth. They are the crop being continuously harvested. The trap doesn't snap shut when you sign the lease. It snaps shut when you wake up the next morning and realize the high hasn't lasted. You see, the modern consumer is chronically exhausted. You spend 40, 50, maybe 60 hours a week trapped in a corporate cage. Whether you're an American middle manager drowning in emails or a Godinez suffocating in a corporate high-rise, the psychological drain is identical. You are trading your irreplaceable life force for a paycheck that barely covers the inflation rate. And because the system drains you of your vitality, it politely offers you a synthetic substitute, retail therapy. They have engineered a society where exhaustion is treated with consumption. You don't buy the premium smartphone because your old one stopped working. You buy it as a desperate psychological compensation. You buy it because holding a piece of titanium gives you a fleeting, manufactured sense of control in a life where you control absolutely nothing. Phase 2. The algorithmic cage. And this is where the predators circle the herd. The banking conglomerates aren't your primary enemy anymore. The new antagonist is the hyper-optimized, algorithmic credit industry. The buy now, pay later applications that embed themselves directly into your social media feeds. They track your cursor. They monitor your late-night scrolling habits when your willpower is at its absolute lowest. They know exactly when you feel the most vulnerable, the most underappreciated, and they present you with the perfect, frictionless solution. Just 4 easy payments. Just a simple click. It is the halo effect weaponized against the working class. You believe that by acquiring the artifacts of the wealthy, their success will somehow rub off on you. You wrap yourself in designer logos, hoping the fabric will act as a shield against your own financial insecurity. But the fabric is transparent. The wealthy see right through it. The bank sees right through it. The only person you are successfully fooling is the one staring back at you in the rearview mirror of a car you don't actually own. Every time you authorize one of these micro-loans, you are biting down on the poisoned cheese. You think you're treating yourself, but you are actually tightening the springs on your own mousetrap. You are exchanging your future leverage for a brief hit of digital dopamine. The algorithms don't just want your money, they want your emotional dependency. They want you caught in a perpetual cycle where you work to consume, and you consume to tolerate the work. Consumption is the tax the weak pay to temporarily feel strong. That is the fundamental truth the credit industry prays you never realize. Look at the architecture of the modern checkout screen. It is a masterpiece of behavioral manipulation. The full price of the item is minimized, written in a faint gray font. But the installment plan, the 4 easy payments, is highlighted in bright, reassuring colors. They mentally shrink the hurdle. They anesthetize the pain of the transaction with digital abstraction. Poverty isn't just a lack of funds anymore. In the modern era, it is a highly profitable psychological condition. They have designed the maze so perfectly that the lab rats are now voluntarily financing their own wheels. You walk around wearing the uniform of success, completely oblivious to the fact that you are bleeding out on the financial operating table. Let's look at the numbers, not the numbers the bank shows you on the sleek mobile app with the colorful progress bars. The real numbers. The ones that dictate whether you spend your 60s actually resting or greeting customers at a big box retail store just to afford your medication. You tell yourself that financing the premium lifestyle is just a small monthly tax for your happiness. You rationalize the car lease and the balance carried on the premium travel rewards card. You call it self-care. Here is a universal law of the modern economy. The moment you label a depreciating liability as a reward for your hard work, you have already lost the game. You are no longer evaluating mathematics. You are evaluating your own bruised ego. It is time to strip the emotion away and look at the brutal arithmetic of opportunity cost. Every single dollar you divert to a credit card company to cover a 25% interest charge is a dollar that has been permanently assassinated. It can never work for you. It can never compound. You haven't just lost a dollar. You have murdered its entire genetic lineage of future earnings. Let's put this into perspective. You decide to swipe your card for a $3,500 designer watch. You don't have the cash, so it sits on the plastic, compounding at maximum velocity. Over 3 years of making minimum payments and fighting the interest, That item doesn't cost you $3,500. It costs you closer to $5,000. But that is the small tragedy. The catastrophic tragedy is what that capital would have done if you hadn't voluntarily surrendered it. If you had taken that same $5,000, placed it into a simple index fund, and left it alone for 30 years, it would have transformed into over $50,000. You didn't buy a watch. You bought a piece of metal and glass by sacrificing $50,000 of your own future freedom. You traded a year of early retirement for an accessory that will be out of style before the battery dies. Phase 3. The arithmetic of vanity. This is the silent extraction process. The system doesn't need to steal your money through force. They just need to convince you that looking successful today is more important than actually being successful tomorrow. They weaponize inflation and interest rates to create a dual-front war against your net worth. While the cost of your groceries relentlessly climbs, the banks are simultaneously draining your liquidity from behind through high-yield consumer debt. Consider the ultimate vanity tax, the premium vehicle. You sign away $900 a month for the privilege of temporarily borrowing a depreciating German engine to sit in rush-hour traffic. Over 4 years, you bleed out over $40,000. When the contract ends, you hand the keys back and walk away with absolute zero. If that same $900 had been aggressively directed into cash-flowing assets, you would be building an invisible fortress. Instead, you built a glass house for the dealership. You are paying top dollar to rent your own poverty. You celebrate a 3% annual raise at work, completely ignoring that your revolving debt is growing at 24%. It's the mathematical equivalent of trying to bail water out of a sinking boat using a slotted spoon. You feel incredibly busy. You feel like you are making an effort, but you are still going straight to the bottom. Every time you prioritize the illusion of status over the accumulation of equity, you walk directly into the trap. You become the perfect lab rat, obediently trading chunks of your finite existence to enrich banking conglomerates. You aren't building a life. You are financing a deeply unprofitable theatrical production. And the worst part is, the audience you are performing for doesn't even care. They are too busy drowning in their own debt to notice yours. The system has programmed you to fear invisibility. They have convinced you that if your success isn't loudly broadcasted, validated by the algorithm, and envied by your peers, it simply doesn't exist. This is the exact psychological flaw the banks exploit to keep the labor force running on the wheel. But let me tell you a secret about the people who actually control the board. Real wealth is entirely silent. It does not demand attention. It demands autonomy. I have watched men in tailored suits sweat through their collars at high-end steakhouses in Manhattan, and I have seen the exact same hollow panic in the trendy districts of Mexico City. Here is the absolute truth. The loudest guy in the room is almost always the most leveraged. He is screaming for your validation because his net worth is suffocating underwater. The truly wealthy walk right past him in unmarked clothing, entirely undisturbed by the opinions of strangers. When you stop playing the game of appearances, the banking conglomerates lose their most effective bait. The credit industry builds the perfect mousetrap using your own vanity as the cheese, and every time you swipe for status, you voluntarily snap the heavy iron bar over your own neck. To break free, you must completely rewire your biological response to social status. You have to look at the depreciating luxury vehicle and the designer labels and recognize them for what they truly are. They are not trophies. They are highly optimized financial chains. Phase 4. The freedom of irrelevance. Stealth wealth is the ultimate rebellion against a hyper-consumerist society. It is the conscious decision to embrace social irrelevance. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated power of waking up on a Tuesday morning, completely unbothered by what the digital crowd thinks of your lifestyle. You drive a reliable, unassuming vehicle that you hold the actual title to. Your cash flow is not being systematically drained by 25% interest rates on premium travel cards. Instead, your capital is quietly deployed in the shadows. It is sitting in index funds, acquiring assets, and generating passive dividend streams. You become a ghost to the credit bureaus. You no longer need their plastic approval because you possess the only metric that actually matters: absolute control over your finite time. This is where the separation happens. Most people will listen to this, nod their heads, and then immediately go back to scrolling through leasing offers. They are too addicted to the applause of the cage. Phase 5. The ghost in the maze. It takes psychological brutality to disconnect yourself from the modern financial matrix. You have to be willing to let your neighbors think you are falling behind. You have to smile politely when the heavily leveraged guy at the office mocks your older smartphone. Let him enjoy the illusion of superiority, because 5 years from now, when the economy contracts and the interest rates squeeze the oxygen out of the middle class, he will be having a panic attack at his desk, terrified of corporate downsizing. You will be sitting in silence, completely untouchable. You won't just survive the storm. You will buy the assets they are forced to liquidate. You build your wealth in the dark, and you let the fools blind themselves with the spotlight. If you made it to the end of this autopsy, drop a comment below saying, "Invisible equity." The tourists won't understand it. They will keep swiping their lives away. But I will know you found the exit. My name is Daniel Rath. Stop performing, start building, and fade to black.